Hey guys, welcome to Ben Wrenchin. My name is Ben, and today I'm wrenching on my 1994 Chevy K1500. I'm going to change out the Serpentine Belt and also the tensioner pulley, and I'm going to explain to you why I think I need to change out the tensioner pulley. I've got a few problems that I think that's going to take care of. So this is really all the tools that you need to get this done. I've got a 1/2-inch drive ratchet. I've got a long breaker bar for the tension on the tensioner pulley. I've got two sockets. I've got a 15mm and a 16mm. I've got these short sockets. I will link that set in the description as well as all these tools. But we're going to need this short set to get in there. I got a new tensioner and I also got a new belt. The belt that I got is 6PK2425 by Bando. So this is the belt that you need if you do not have the air pump. So right here, I've just got an idler pulley. If you have the air pump, you're gonna need a different size belt, and you can look those up. Rock Auto has the best description of belts and which engine they go to, whether you have, the air pump, AC or no AC, you're gonna need a different belt size. But this is the belt that I need. So that's really all I need to get this done. I may use my new cordless ratchet since I just got it and I want to have a reason to use it. But you don't need one of those. You could get by with just a normal socket wrench and then some kind of long bar to get the tension off of the tensioner pulley. So a bit of a backstory of why I think I need to change the tensioner pulley involves the fact that there are multiple components that the belt drives that I think are not working properly. One of them being right here. This is the AC compressor. I just did a video on checking and filling AC refrigerant, and what I found is that my pressures are pretty good, but my high side pressure is a little bit low, meaning the compressor is working and I can see it spinning, but it's really just not putting out enough power to cool the system. So another issue that I have is with the alternator. So I have a voltage issue. I will show that in a little bit of what's going on with the voltage. But the only other things connected to this belt are that right there is the power steering pump, and I don't really have any issues there, but the only other accessory is the fan drive, and it also is the water pump or the coolant pump. So this is a diagram of how the belt wraps around these pulleys, and as you can see all those components on here. The water pump, I believe, is not pumping coolant quick enough, which causes me to have low temperatures when I first start it up. So at cold start, it takes a while to get up to temperature. My AC is not working like it should, even though the pressures are pretty much there. And also, I'm having voltage issues, and could be because of a bad alternator. I do know that I need to replace my battery. I've tested that and put a video up about that too. But all of those problems together lead me to believe that it's possible that if I change out the belt and the tensioner pulley, I may actually solve one or more of those problems. So that's what I'm going to do today. It's easy stuff to change out. The pulley was like $27, the belt was like $14. So rather than changing out the compressor, replacing the battery, replacing the alternator, chasing all this stuff down, I want to try this and see what it'll fix. So let me show you some of these issues while the truck's running. So here's some of the problems that I have that indicate to me that the belt tensioner is not holding the belt tight enough. So the belt drives the alternator, and I've had voltage issues where when I put the truck in drive, the voltage starts dropping, and any of the accessories that I use. So if I turn my air even on low, it'll go a little bit lower. If I turn the lights on, it'll go even lower. And so basically I can't drive with too many accessories on without the voltage dropping too low. Now that doesn't indicate that the alternator's bad or necessarily that the belt tensioner isn't getting enough tension on the belt. It could be a bad battery, and I know from testing my battery before that I do need to replace my battery. But the other issues that I have are I've been driving for about 5 minutes and I didn't even get up to operating temperature. And it's hot outside today, so that leads me to believe that the water pump is not pumping coolant through the engine fast enough to get it up to operating temperature quick enough. And the last problem I have is with the AC. So if I turn my AC on, it is not getting cold at all. And I've checked the pressures on the high and low side, and they're a little bit low, but I think that the compressor is not getting the high side up to enough pressure, and obviously my AC isn't cold. So the fact that my AC is not cold, even though there's refrigerant in there and pretty good pressures, my voltage gets low anytime I turn on any accessories, and my coolant temperature is staying low longer than it should. So when I turn all these accessories off, my voltage jumps back up to a normal level. All right, so with all that together, it leads me to believe if I change out this belt and this tensioner pulley, then I may solve those problems. So I'm going to take the 16mm socket and put it right here. All right, so I've got my long breaker bar on that 16mm short socket, and I'm just going to relieve the tension and take the belt off, and that'll allow me to get the pulley off. Before taking the belt off, you want to make sure that you've got a diagram of how the belt loops around all the pulleys. This is the best diagram that I could find, so this is what I'm going to use. And you may be able to find a better diagram, or you may just draw one yourself too. I've done that before. But you want to make sure you know how this belt is oriented around all these pulleys before you take it off. So I repositioned my breaker bar, and I'm just going to pull it this way and loosen it up until I can get the belt free. And I can get it off one of the pulleys and put it back down. And that allows me to take the entire belt off. There we go. So looking at this belt, it is absolute garbage. There's cracks all down the belt, and there's actually areas where it's split completely open. So it was definitely time to change this belt out. First thing you want to do when you get the belt off is take the new one out of the package and compare it to the old one as far as size, width, number of teeth in the belt and everything. So I always put the new belt around the old one and just stretch them out and see how long they are, make sure it's the same size. Alright, so that looks pretty good. I can get it pretty tight. The next thing I want to do is make sure that they're the same width. So that looks good. I also want to count and make sure it's got the same number of teeth on it. So both of these have 6. The old one looks a little bit deeper and V-shaped than the new one. I ran into this with the last belt that I got, and the new belt that didn't look as V-shaped was fine. So I'm going to assume that this one's fine. It said this was the right size belt for my truck on Rock Auto. I like to use theirs. They have good descriptions of which belt goes to which truck. So depending on how many pulleys you have, if you have the air pump, which is also called the smog pump, mine doesn't have that. It's just got an idler pulley. But everything looks good, so we'll go ahead and get this belt on and make sure it's good. You want to double check and make sure once you get the belt on that you run the truck and make sure it sounds okay before you take off down the road. So just compare as much as you can from the old belt to the new belt and make sure they're basically the same. With the belt off, I'm going to use a 15mm short socket on my breaker bar and break this bolt loose that holds the tensioner pulley on there. And this is where I get to try my new cordless ratchet. Alright, so I got to use it for all of 2 seconds before I didn't have any clearance and had to switch to a regular socket wrench, but that's okay. It was fun while it lasted. So I get this bolt off the rest of the way, and that is the only thing holding on the tensioner pulley. Comparing the old pulley to the new one, they look like the same size. I just want to make sure that these pulleys look like they're the same size. Cylinder with a spring in it looks about the same size, looks the same thickness. On the back side, you've got this pin over here. You want to make sure that's going to match up too. Everything looks the same, so everything looks good, but I always like to compare parts before I try to get them on and wonder why they're not fitting on and all that. So it's always good to compare your parts before you put new parts on. So now I will get this one on the same way I took the old one off. Before I put the new pulley on, I'm just going to hit this surface with a wire brush. You don't have to do this, but it only takes a few seconds. And it's nice to clean things like this up while you got this part off, because you may not take it off for another 30 years. Try one of these spongy sand blocks. Alright, that looks about as good as it's going to get, so I'm going to use some isopropyl alcohol on a towel and just clean this up. And now I'm ready to install the new pulley. I've got the screw in there. You want to push it in so that pin rests inside the hole that it's supposed to go into. So I'll just put it on and turn it until it goes down all the way, and then thread the bolt in there. Tighten it down and just make sure that pin stays in the spot that it's supposed to go into. I am going to reference my Haynes manual to see that the drivetrain tensioner mounting bolt, mine is a 5.7 liter engine, it's 61 feet-pounds. For whatever reason, on the 7.4 liter engines, it's only 37, so it's like half. But either way, I'm going to tighten this down to 61 foot-pounds. One thing that I thought was interesting in this Haynes manual, under changing, or I guess checking and replacing the drive belt, it says that it's acceptable to have cracks that are running across the V portion of the belt, but it's unacceptable if they're running parallel to the grooves. So I thought that was interesting. So I guess I failed to mention that you may need a torque wrench as well. If you don't have a torque wrench, you could just tighten this down until the cows come home and it should be fine. So I'm gonna go ahead and tighten this down to 61 foot-pounds. There we go. And one thing that's interesting about the new pulley is that the bolt that's 15 millimeters shares the same size with the bolt on the new pulley. So they actually made that better by making these two the same size. I guess a 16 millimeter bolt on this tensioner pulley is better because it's bigger, so it can take more torque on it. But I like that it's the same size on this new one, so that's an upgrade. I forgot to mention that the truck's got a belt diagram on it, so you can always use that. So this will show you how the belt routes with or without an AC compressor on it. So just follow that when you're putting the new belt on. So when I put the new belt on, I like to start at the bottom and wrap everything around the bottom that I can get, and then just try to pull tight on the top until I get it around everything that I want. The biggest trick to getting this on the right way is to make sure that the correct side is over this fan pulley, because that's going to tell you where that part of it needs to be, whether you need to be on this side of the fan or the other side. So I'm going to hold it on the fan pulley and go around the power steering pulley, then up around the alternator, then it's going to go underneath the tensioner and up over the compressor. I'm probably going to do the compressor last, so I'm going to take this back off after I get everything around the right places, and wrap the flat side around the idler pulley. Alright, so now I've got everything where it needs to go, but I'm going to take it off the compressor so I can get it around the crankshaft pulley on the bottom. And with that positioned correctly, I can get it around the compressor, pull everything tight next to the tensioner pulley, and I can almost barely get it over the tensioner pulley. So at that point, I just want to double check and make sure the ridges of the belt are in the teeth of the pulleys all the way around, and everything feels good. Looks like it's lined up properly. So with that done, you just want to make sure to put your socket on the correct side of the belt so that when you relieve the tension on the pulley, you can get it under there and hold the belt on the pulleys with the teeth and center your belt onto the tensioner pulley as you let go. So there we go, the belt's on there. I just want to feel around again and make sure that the belt is seated properly in all of these pulleys and centered, and everything feels good. So I'm glad that I did that because it slid off the fan pulley a little bit, so I can relieve the pressure, get it back on that fan pulley right where it needs to be, and let the tension back down again and check everything again. Alright, so one reason that was so easy is because it's not even around this idler pulley. So I'm going to have to relieve the tension, get it back onto that idler pulley, get it centered on there as I relieve the tension. And that should be pretty good. So it doesn't need to be centered perfectly on these flat pulleys because those will center themselves. Really all that matters is that it's centered on these pulleys with teeth in them. So as long as the belt is in those grooves perfectly, then it'll center itself on these flat pulleys. All right, so real quick, I'll just reference my chart, take a look and make sure every single pulley has the belt going around the proper area. So it needs to go over this compressor, around that side of the idler pulley, down around the crankshaft pulley on the bottom, back up over the fan pulley, back down over the power steering pump pulley, back up over the alternator, down around the tensioner, and back up over the compressor. So everything looks good. The belt is in all the pulleys the correct way. We torqued down the tensioner bolt, and so we are ready to start the truck and make sure it runs well. All right, with the belt on, I'm gonna go ahead and start the truck. I'm gonna be ready to turn it right back off in case I missed any part of that belt install. All right, everything sounds good. So I just want to take a look at the belt, make sure everything looks like it's running smoothly. It's not running off any of the pulleys. Everything there looks good. And looks pretty good over here too. All right, so now I turn the truck back off and I just want to make sure that the belt still looks good on all these pulleys, looks centered, and it's not hanging off any of them. The first one I wanted to check was that fan pulley because it looked like it was back a little bit, but you can see where there's some dirt and corrosion right here, so the belt did not normally rest there. It rested towards the back of it, and it's still on the back surface of it, so it's not hanging off at all, so that's good news. I guess that's where it's supposed to be. It'll find exactly where it's supposed to be when everything else is aligned properly, so I'm good with that. Next thing for me to check is to see if my AC works. All right, so with the truck running, I'm going to turn on the AC, turn it up to full blast, and my voltage looks a little better, which is good news. Let's try to turn on some more accessories. Yeah, the voltage still looks pretty low, so that's not a good sign. But we'll see if the AC does anything. So right now it's reading at about 80 degrees. So I'll let this run for a little bit and see if it gets any cooler. All right, so I've let it run for a while. The temperature did not change really at all. And my voltage problem is still there too, because since I've got accessories on, the voltage is still low. And when I turn them off, yeah, it jumps back up to where it's supposed to. So the bad news is it didn't really fix the things that I was hoping it was gonna fix. But there is good news out of this. The good news being that in taking the belt off to change out the pulley, I found that my belt was split completely open and really needed to be changed yesterday. So that's the good news. It's a little disappointing in that my hypothesis that the tension was not getting enough to cause the compressor, the alternator, and the water pump to operate properly was busted. But the good news is I got a new pulley, so I know that the tension is right. I got a new belt, so I know that's good. And now I know that I still need to change out the battery, possibly still the alternator too. I haven't had that tested yet because I haven't had a good battery to get a good test on it. But that should fix the voltage issue. I'm gonna keep working on this AC issue, and I'll put some videos up of how I diagnose AC systems. But that is how to change the belt and the tensioner pulley on your Chevy truck. Thanks for watching, guys. Make sure you subscribe to see more content on my truck, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Thanks.